What is going on, guys? Grave here. Today I'd like to talk about a big topic in the community that's been something talked about for the last several years, but really discussed a lot more as of the last couple years, and that is Overland content difficulty. And of course, in this year's letter to the community from the head of ZOS, so the head person there of the studio, did talk about this was one of their kind of points, one of their bullet points they're wanting to look at. They know that the community wants harder Overland content, and they're looking into it. No time frame of when this will be available, and I would assume probably, just my guess, I have no clue, probably not this year, maybe something going for next year. I do think it needs harder content when it comes to the Overland. A lot of people have complained, saying it kind of lulls you into a false sense of security if you're a person that doesn't participate in a lot of in-game content. So vet dungeons, maybe normal trials, veteran trials. You feel like when you go do some stuff in Overland that you're pretty much unstoppable. You get into harder content, it is way harder than you expected. You don't do enough damage. The enemies are doing tons of damage. Your builds may not be right because things that work in easy Overland content don't work in other content. And I do see that complaint being a concern, I guess, to a lot of people in the community. But overall, I think it would just be nice for the game to have something like that, just for more XP, just for more of a challenge, just for better drops. So there's been a lot of comments out there on people talking about and saying how they would like to see this change implemented. Some have said more hit points on the enemies, make it scale to where if you're lower level, it won't be too hard. If you're higher level, it's going to scale to your level, so everything's more difficult. Kind of bump up that difficulty just in general by the way it scales right now. I would like to see something kind of like this in Diablo. I don't know if they would ever do that, but actually have a option to where you can go in and select your difficulty tier for that instance you're going to be put into. I don't know how hard of a thing that would be, considering we have just two servers. No matter what platform you play on, there's an NA server and an EU server. I'm not sure if this would be something they could do just instance based per zone, but I would really like to see something that would benefit players to bumping up the difficulty, so where you're getting more drops, even XP for being on a higher tier difficulty. So if you want to go grind out CP, you can say, you know what, I'm going to knock up the Overland content, these world bosses, to the highest I can get it, and that way I can grind my CP levels out. You don't have to go to Aliker Desert, you don't have to go to Black Rose Prison, you can just do it inside of Overland content. And then, of course, there are a few players complaining that they don't want to see too much of a change because some of the world bosses are more difficult or already difficult enough as it is. And I do understand that. Soloing a lot of world bosses myself, there are some that are a lot harder to defeat than others. But one good thing is that's where I think having harder, more difficult things would come in, because if you can defeat those, you can kind of just bump up that difficulty again, and it would be a very enjoyable experience. Once you decide kind of what playing field you want to play on. Do you want to play on a simpler, easier one that's going to give less rewards, less XP, whatever? Or would you like to play on one that maybe when you go defeat this world boss, the drop is, let's just go for example, if you were going to go farm spinner's gear in ESO, you would have a guaranteed drop in this harder difficulty zone, harder difficulty instance. You would get a guaranteed purple and better rolls on it. Maybe it would always be in Divines or have a better chance to be in Divines. And like I said, you're going to gain anywhere from, depending on the difficulty, 20% to maybe a max of 50 to 60% more XP for being on a harder kind of tier of that particular instance that you're in. I think there's a lot of ways they could go about it. That's just one that I would like to see happen. Like I said, I don't know if it ever will, but I do think if and when, because I do think it's coming eventually, if and when they do this, I think it's going to open up the door for doing this also in dungeons and in trials. So I would like to see this later down the road, after they kind of get all the kinks worked out. They've added it to the base game where you can have harder Overland content. Add this into dungeons where you can have more difficulty tiers on normal dungeons, on vet dungeons, on normal trials and vet trials. Some way to make them more challenging, and once again give better rewards for adding those elements to it. Not quite sure how they could do that. There's a lot of different ways that other games have implemented that as well, but I think it does open the door for ZOS to do that eventually, because we all know the power creep in ESO is real. It's always been like that, And until things are adjusted, and we do know that there's going to be a lot of nerfs probably coming after update 46 launches with the new subclassing system. But at the same time, players that have played for a really long time, people that are continuing to play every day, are refining their builds, refining their CP to be a lot higher than maybe the game intended at some point before everything we have now was available in game. So I think having a difficult Overland content setting, or somehow increasing that so it's good for players that want to have a harder experience, but for newer players they still can experience the game at a normal pace, would be a great idea. Leave me a comment with your thoughts. Let me know what you think. How would you like to see more difficult Overland content implemented into ESO? And would you like to see that roll over into, like I said, other parts of the game where it comes to dungeons and trials? Leave me a comment with your thoughts. And of course, if you like the video, hit the like. If you have not subscribed yet, please do so. And I'll catch you next time. Peace.